All right, welcome back to Close Up, everyone. When talk of the 2016 race for the White House started, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie was seen as an outspoken, tell-it-like-it-is type of politician. Then Donald Trump entered the race and became the ultimate say-anything candidate, and get-away-with-anything candidate, apparently. That has some people, though, hoping that Christie will fill a void for a more traditional candidate whose experience and substance will ultimately stand out. The question is how he convinces voters over the next few weeks. He's here to answer that question. Hopefully, good to see you, Governor. Thanks.
Josh, thank you.
So, yeah, I mean, we are certainly in the home stretch here. Polls are what they are, but right now it's looking like, Donald Trump's still at the top now, but Ted Cruz. What is the strategy moving forward?
It's the same as it's been since July. You get up here in New Hampshire, you work hard, you meet as many people as you can. And I could tell you, and you know this, you know New Hampshire voters as well as anybody, they're really concerned about national security and terrorism. And what they want is a commander-in-chief who knows how to get that done, protect them, keep them safe and secure, and enhance America's image around the world. I'm the only person in this race that's fought terrorism on the ground as a prosecutor. They know I'll be ready on day one when I get into the Oval Office. And so that's what we talk about as we go travel around the state and keep doing these town hall meetings and meeting as many people as possible. And the strategy is the same as it was in July. It's been working. We're not changing it.
The Republican field, though, can be broken up into different parts. I mean, you have Donald Trump and Ted Cruz. A lot of people say the only difference between those two are cowboy boots. And then you have the governors who are kind of duking it out. Yourself, Jeb Bush, John Kasich. Is that problematic as you try to make this case that some of the attacks are coming from fellow governors when you try to make the case that, you know what, executive experience is what we need now?
Well, I think, listen, the attacks are coming from people that I'm passing, and that's the problem for them. You never shoot behind. You always shoot at someone who's next to you or ahead of you. And so for us, that's a really good sign to have people shooting at us. And people understand who I am. I mean, I've been up here in New Hampshire a lot. People are getting to know me. And so I don't worry about those attacks. They're more than that. More than coming from Jeb or John Kasich, they're coming from Marco Rubio. And the fact is that people will be able to evaluate his record and what he's accomplished in less than one term in the United States Senate and compare that to a governor and a federal prosecutor who's had 13 years of experience.
All right, let's talk about State of the Union address this week from President Obama, really focused on more optimism rather than the fear that is out there. What was your take from what you heard?
It should have been called Story Time with Barack Obama rather than the State of the Union address. I mean, this is a guy who said in that speech that the Syria policy is working. Tell that to the 250,000 dead Syrians and the millions of others that are running to Europe and the Middle East to try to save their lives. He said that ISIS is really not a big threat, that others are overplaying it. This sounds like when he said that the reason we're anxious about it is we watch too much cable news. I mean, this president is completely out of touch. He sees the world, Josh, as he wishes it was, not the world the way it is. We need a president who sees it, once again, the world as it is, and develops strategies to deal with that world as it is. This president didn't do it again last night, and I think with a year left, there's no hope he's going to.
I'll point out that we're taping this on a Wednesday. This will air on Sunday, so we'll see where things stand. But I want to ask you about the Iranian situation with the sailors and the detainment. I mean, this is a very tricky and potentially dangerous situation here. As you evaluate this, what are you seeing from perhaps the boldness of Iran to take such a move, and what would your reaction be? Well,
it shows, listen, Josh, it shows the lack of respect they have for the President of the United States. I mean, this is a guy who just signed an agreement with them that was ridiculously tilted towards them, and I think they feel like they can take advantage of him whenever they want. What I would do much differently is, on the first day, I'd say three things about Iran. First, you'll never get a nuclear weapon. Not on my watch ever, and if I have to use military action to prevent it, I will. Second, there will not be another discussion, let alone an agreement between us, until you recognize Israel's right to exist. And third, that there needs to be regime change in Iran. Now, I'm not saying I would send troops over there to do it, but we need to stand up against this illegitimate regime that abuses and stones women, that hangs homosexuals from cranes in the center of Tehran because of their sexual orientation, and is the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. We got to say it's an illegitimate regime. If we said those things, I think they'd be a lot more reluctant to take the kind of action that they took against this president just this past week.
Regime change, obviously a big topic, though, within this conversation for the spending the debates. That people fear that becomes a more dangerous world with regime change, and it creates a void that is ultimately filled by people who are more dangerous than the ones that are being replaced.
Well, listen, I think that when you look at the regime in Iran over the last 36 years, chanting death to America, sponsoring Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen, This is a very dangerous regime. And so my view is, I'm not saying, Josh, I want to be clear, I'm not saying we should send troops over there to change the regime, but I think we need to stand on principle and say the regime should be changed to be able to give confidence and hope to people inside Iran who don't want to live under this type of circumstance any longer, that there are people out here who would have their back if they decided to do that.
All right, let's talk about you. And let's not forget you have a day job as well. This week you delivered the State of the State address in New Jersey. As you make the case to the rest of the nation, what within that address do you point to? Because this is about record, and say, you know what, this is a good example of why I can take this to the White House and translate it nationally.
Well, it's about getting things done, right? It's not about talking about it, it's about getting things done. So let's talk about an issue that's real big in New Hampshire and in New Jersey, drug addiction. We put steps into place over 2 years ago to say more drug treatment, less incarceration. What's happened since that time? Our prison population has gone down so much in New Jersey that I now announced yesterday we're closing a state prison. Closing a state prison. I don't think they're doing that anyplace else in the country. And what are we going to do with it, Josh? We're remodeling it, and we're going to turn it into a drug treatment facility where folks who are in the criminal justice system can go and get drug treatment before they get back out on the streets, get their lives in order, and give them a chance to succeed. Also, 18 months ago, we put Narcan across our entire state and trained every police officer and EMS person. What's happened? 2015, first time in 4 years, we have seen overdose deaths go down in New Jersey. What that should tell people in New Hampshire who are struggling with this problem right now is you need someone who knows what they're doing to be able to help fix the problems that plague our country. On the drug addiction problem, we don't have it solved, but we're moving it in the right direction, and that's the kind of leadership I'll bring to the country. Tackling real problems, solving them, and moving them back in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, talk about reform. That certainly is an example of it. One of the things that people are talking about up here is, as New Hampshire does deal with this issue, is the creation of a registry for convicted heroin dealers, a lot like the sex offender registry. Is that something you'd be in support of?
Certainly something I'd be happy to take a look at. I mean, fact is it's worked very well in Megan's Law, and Megan's Law began in New Jersey. Megan Kanka, who that is named after, was a young girl who was killed by a convicted sex offender in New Jersey. It was her parents who fought hard to get Megan's Law not only in New Jersey but then spread across the entire country. So New Jersey has a history with these type of things. We're comfortable with them. It's certainly something I would be willing to look at.
Moving forward, again, we only have a couple of minutes left and only a few weeks. How do you get through? I mean, do you think that people are listening when you make the case that you're the guy? And do you change it all in the last week?
I don't think so. I think what people want to see is consistency. What they'd like to see from you is what are the things you really believe, articulate them directly, fairly, and take their questions. Folks in New Hampshire love to have their questions taken and answered, and that's what we're doing. We have done 48 town halls across this state. I'll do my 49th on this Wednesday, and when I get back to New Hampshire after the debates this coming week, we'll get back to New Hampshire and do our 50th town hall meeting. I mean, we're making significant strides here, and we're not going to change anything, Josh. It's worked. It's moving us up in the polls. It's moving us up in the esteem of the New Hampshire voter, and we're looking forward to February 9th. I think it's going to be a very good day for us.
Have you identified an area or a finish that you need to have? I mean, how well do you think you need to do? Because when it comes to the governors, the pundits, and I know you love the pundits, say that there's really only, for the governors, one ticket out of here.
Well, listen, if there's only one ticket out, it's going to be mine. And I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure that we beat Governor Bush, Governor Kasich, Governor Huckabee, and make sure that we're the top-ranking governor coming out of here.
And with character and leadership, obviously something that's going to be consideration for New Hampshire voters when they go behind the curtain. Moving forward, you've been reluctant to mix it up, really criticize personally Donald Trump, or Ted Cruz for that matter. But is there a time where you do have to kind of say, look, this is the difference between he and I, and this is why I'm the person that...
Yeah, listen, I think I have been saying it, Josh. There's a big difference between talking about doing things and actually getting them done. I've shown I can get them done. I've disagreed with him on aspects of his immigration plan. I've disagreed with him on the fact that he has no entitlement reform plan. I mean, I'll disagree on the issues. I'm not going to get into name calling. And I'm not going to get into the bickering back and forth on the stage in the debates, because all that does is lessen us as Republicans. I'm going to keep my eye on the ball. This is about beating Hillary Clinton. And if we weaken ourselves in the primary, we won't be able to beat her, and then this country will be unrecognizable. Here's one thing the New Hampshire voters should know about me already. I'm the best person to be on that stage in September prosecuting the case against Hillary Clinton. They want a former federal prosecutor to do that.
And in order to beat her, you got to unite the party. And a few moments ago on this program, Ted Cruz says he's the guy that can unite the Republican Party, bring all the factions together, Reagan, Democrats, whoever. What do you make of that statement, and why are you the guy that can unite the party to win?
Well, I find it hard to believe that a guy who's been in a red state and has only dealt with Republicans in his life really can bring the entire country together. We'll bring our party together because that's what we did in New Jersey, in a blue state, in a difficult state to win. Not only got elected against an incumbent governor who spent $33 million attacking me in 2009, but then got reelected in 2013 with 61% of the vote in a blue state. That's not talking about uniting people. That's actually getting it done and showing the evidence of it. I'll be able to do that with our party, and more importantly, I'll be able to do that with our nation come November of 2016.
Well, you've certainly been working hard in New Hampshire, and best of luck to you, Governor, moving forward.
Appreciate it.
Thanks again. Now we'll be right back with political reporter John DeStaso for a discussion of where things stand. Stay with us.